Hi everybody, I'm Susan Mulvihill. Welcome back to our garden, although certainly not our vegetable garden for a change of pace. Today I'm thinking about planting containers, and I have all sorts of tips to share with you so that you'll be really happy with what you create for your own garden. You know, flowers are such a delight. Yeah, I know we grow all kinds of edible crops, but I couldn't live without the flowers. I love their beauty. I love how they attract pollinators. Many of them have wonderful scents. Some of them are great cut flowers. And so I want to have as many around as possible. And if you have a front porch or a back deck or a patio, all of these areas would look so pretty with some containers. So I'm going to share some tips with you today. And before we get started, I wanted to tell you what's happened with our weather because it is crazy. And I know this is happening around the country a lot too. So as you know, my husband and I live in Spokane, Washington. It's about 300 miles east of Seattle, and our hardiness zone here ranges from 5B to 6A. It has been very, very cold here. We've had some very hard frosts. Some of them have impacted a few of our plants, which is frustrating. But then Mother Nature decided to hit the other end of the extreme because we went from having the low 30s at night, maybe 40s during the day, to now having highs in the 80s. Talk about weather whiplash. So it has really thrown me off with my timing of planting things because ordinarily I try to be very patient and very conservative and not plant warm season crops or annual flowers too early. And now I'm saying, I gotta catch up because the long-term forecast says this is what we're going to have for a while, so I might as well just get things planted and get to it. I planted this deck pot a couple of days ago, and I wanted to start with it because there's some basic points that you want to keep in mind when you're planting containers. The first thing is the design of your plantings. So you're looking for a thriller, a filler, and a spiller. So the thriller is going to be the main plant, and there's something about it that's going to be really eye-catching. And so in this case, I planted this Canova Rose canna lily. It's going to be quite large, and it's going to have beautiful, large rose flowers that will be very popular with the hummingbirds. My filler is this lantana, also very popular with the hummingbirds. And this one is called Luscious Basket Tanglow. And then my spiller is this portulaca here. And this one is called Campino Twist Red. And this should be very popular at the very least with pollinators. And I'm hoping that the hummingbirds will like them too. The cool thing is that there will be the rose-colored flowers on the canna lilies. This lantana has two shades in it, yellow and a peachy color, so I think that'll look nice. And then, of course, this portulaca is basically striped with sort of a peachy and a yellow color. So that is going to be looking really cool. The other thing is that the larger the container is, the longer moisture will stay within it. Now this container is actually a self-watering container, and what that means is it has a water reservoir in the bottom that wicks the water up into the potting soil. So this is really great if you need to go out of town for a few days during the summer. You know that the plants will still get water. So that's very cool. And one last thing is that when you're planting containers, if you can go with a potting soil, that is the most ideal. Some of them contain water-retaining polymers, and that's something that helps the soil stay moist longer. So that is a good idea. Now there's one other tip I wanted to share with you. A lot of times if we have someone visiting us, they might ask what the variety is of a plant in one of the containers. Well, my tip to you is save the tags and put them in the back of the pot where nobody can see them, but you know they're there, and you can tell them, oh, that's what this variety is. Now let's talk about hanging baskets, and I have something really cool to show you. So this is not the cool part. This is one of the 2 hanging baskets I have put on our front porch for ages. You can see it's a little bit rickety, flimsy wire on it, but hey, it always functioned the way it was supposed to, and I like to be thrifty and reuse things over and over and over. Well, I recently decided, I think I can spring for 2 new hanging baskets for our porch. So let me show you what I got. I bought 2 of these beautiful baskets. These are 14-inch diameter baskets with cocoa fiber liners. I got them from Kinsman Garden Company, and no, I don't have an affiliate relationship with them, but I'm always asked where I get things, so that's why I wanted to let you know. Isn't this just the coolest thing ever? So this is what I'm going to plant, actually 2 of them. Let's get started. So I bought 2 sets of the plants you see here because I like to plant both of the front porch baskets with the same planting scheme. So from left to right, that is a lotus vine Amazon sunset. And to be honest, I have never used this plant before, but I thought it would pick up a little bit of the gray that's in the foliage of these 2 plants. This one is Kufia vermillionaire. I have grown it before in deck containers, and the hummingbirds adore this plant, and it's all about the hummingbirds, right? This next one is Sweet Tunia Fiona Flash, and if you look at how the light hits these petals, you can see there's a little kind of a dusty pink stripe in between each deep red petal. Very cool. And then this last one is a Calibrachoa, and specifically it is Mini Famous Neo Double Orange Tastic. How's that for a name? I also want to clarify that these 2 plants are going to be my spillers. This one is going to be a thriller, and this will be a filler. I was trying to think of how I was going to plant this without it falling over, because the only way it's going to stay upright is to be hanging. And then I thought, well, maybe it'll fit in the top of a 5-gallon bucket. So that's what I'm using, and I think that's going to work pretty well, as long as I don't get too wild with it. You can see I've got some potting soil in here. And then, when you're trying to decide how deeply to plant it, what I do is I keep it in the pot for a moment, and I put it about where I think I want it to go, and that lets me know how deeply it needs to be, because I want the top of the soil within the pot to be even with the top of the soil in the hanging basket. So that's where I want it. That means I will be filling in soil around it. And then just delicately squeeze it out of the pot. Look at that beautiful root system. I'm just going to pull a little bit apart, and then it's going to go right there. Okay, and I'm not going to worry about filling it up until I have all of the plants in place. Next up is my filler. Another beautiful plant. And I think I'll just plant it right across from where the Kufia is. And it's about that height. And then this wonderful spiller. And spiller number 2. And I see that these roots are really circling around in the pot, so I'm definitely going to loosen them. Otherwise they'll just keep going in a circle, and that's hard on the plant. Okay, that looks pretty nice. So now I need to fill in the soil so that all of the soil within each individual pot has soil around it. Otherwise they'll dry out very quickly. Now before I pot up the second hanging basket, I'm going to water this first one right away because I did not pre-moisten the potting soil, and I don't want these to get stressed with as hot as it is today. I'll just let that drain for a bit. And then I'll put on the hanger and hang it out front. Okay, the second basket is planted up and looking good. Now before I go hang it, I had 2 tips that I wanted to share with you. First of all, the potting soil within this cocoa fiber liner is about an inch below the top edge. No matter what kind of container you're planting, you never want to plant all the way right to the top, because every time you water, the soil is going to run over the outside and that will drive you nuts. The other thing I wanted to mention is that I now have 8 empty pots. You know, there is so much plastic in our environment, and what we all need to be doing is reuse, reuse, reuse. If you are into seed starting like I am, use them for your plantings. If you have a gardening friend who is into seed starting, share the pots or donate them to your local garden club that holds plant sales. So it's so important that we reuse this rather than sending it out with our trash. So Bill helped me hang the baskets, and I think they look pretty darn cool. So here's one of them, and now you can see both of them. And here's another angle of our front porch. I think it looks very inviting. You can also see that I've planted up my 2 picket planters with some zonal geraniums, also known as pelargoniums, and the variety is Sunrise Orange. My dad made these picket planters for me ages ago, and I just love them, so they are very special. Let's talk about watering your containers. As I mentioned earlier, containers tend to dry out much more quickly than in-ground plantings, so you really want to monitor them. Your goal is to have the soil stay lightly moist. You definitely don't want it to be sopping wet, because that's hard on the plants, and you don't want it to be bone dry either. Now that said, I wanted to tell you what Bill came up with a few years ago to water our containers automatically. And it is so ingenious. So I'm going to share some details of that with you today. But I did want to let you know I have a video that's all about that system that he set up. It's on my YouTube channel, Susan's in the Garden. And what I'm going to do is put a link to it in the description for this video. And that way you can take a look at it and see the specific details of how he set it up. I just planted up this container for the front porch step, and this will be an easy way to show you part of the setup. So right next to the porch is a planter, and it has a regular sprinkler that's on a riser. And what Bill did is he removed the sprinkler head temporarily, and he added something called a riser adapter with a 1/4 inch barb to the top of the sprinkler, and then screwed that original sprinkler head back on the top. Then what he did is he attached some micro tubing that is 1/4 inch in diameter, that's this stuff here, to that barb on the sprinkler, and ran the tubing into this pot. It has a little stake on it, and this is a mini sprinkler. So it's just right in the middle of the pot, and whenever the front porch planter runs, this will get watered. Now for the hanging baskets, he did something very similar. He took advantage of another sprinkler that's in our front porch planter. Again, he removed the sprinkler top, and he put in its place a riser adapter with 1/4 inch barb. Then he replaced the original sprinkler head on top of that, and onto that barb he attached a whole bunch of white micro tubing. It's 1/4 inch in diameter, and it comes down to the pot. It has a little valve here to control the water flow, which is very important. And then what I'm going to do to be safe is to use a twist tie and just tie in the sprayer so it doesn't go elsewhere. There we go. So that is totally ready. And for the picket planters, he has a very similar setup where he's brought in some 1/4 inch white micro tubing, and then it has a little elbow piece there and some tubing that runs in. It has a valve to control the water flow, and it will water the plants. No matter what kind of container you're using, be sure to provide your plants with some fertilizer. That's because they're not in the ground where there are a lot of nutrients in the soil. They are basically isolated in these containers. And what I really like to use is a slow release fertilizer such as Osmocote, and just sprinkle some on the soil surface. Follow the directions. And what I usually find is that this lasts for a good month. And then it's important to write on your calendar to fertilize them again 1 month later, and that should get them through the whole season. Okay, I've got all of the containers planted. Their water needs have been met. I've fertilized them. It's a beautiful day. I get to just sit and enjoy the view. Yeah, for like a minute, because I'm not a sitter. I hope that you enjoyed the video today. I do hope that you're going to plant a lot of containers that you can enjoy. And thanks so much for watching today, everybody. Happy gardening.